Welcome back to the How to Entrepreneur, the number one Do Not Be a Wantrepreneur podcast. Today, I've got another great guest. I know I say that every episode, but I really do mean it. We are joined by the ultimate content culminate, classically trained ballet dancing chef, instructor for baking and pastry arts at Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. He's appeared on Food Network. He has had wedding cakes featured in Martha Stewart weddings, brides, and the knot, and known everything from bed and breakfast to bakeries in between. Chef Steve Konopelski. Chef Steve, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dylan, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, everybody, for that is currently listening as well.
Awesome. Chris, excuse me. I just did it again. Guys, we did this before the show. I called Steve Chris, and he said it was okay. Should have said it was bad. I'm not going to do it anymore. Steve,
in the multiverse, I'm considered a Chris. So it's only in this one I'm a Steve, but in the multiverse, I probably am a Chris somewhere.
Oh, well, in that case, we got it somewhat right. Chef, tell me, do you go by Steve or do you go by Chef?
I go by Steve. Chef is kind of like when I'm in the kitchen, or especially now when my students are trying to get a hold of me. So yeah, we're just two guys here talking it out.
All right, awesome. Steve, here's your chance. Tell everyone sort of what they can expect on the show today, what your current day-to-day is like, and don't share too much though, because we're going to get into that during the rest of the episode.
Okay. Well, I am actually currently, as Dylan said, a chef instructor at the Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. I am one of faculty as part of our online program. So our school is a little bit different in that we actually do have two ground campuses, but we also have a very, very strong and growing online presence as well. Our online program includes culinary, pastry, plant-based, holistics, and hotel restaurant management. Classes that I currently teach right now are focused more towards hotel restaurant management. So I think that is some stuff that we might talk about today. I'm I kind of lived that American dream, right? I built a business from literally nothing, and love talking about that experience and sharing that experience with anybody that might want to listen. So hopefully we dive into that today.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hate when people say, oh, how did it all start? But we've got classic ballet thrown in there. And I'm guessing that sort of is where this underlying foundation for, the artisan meets artistry sort of began, right?
Absolutely. I am that type of person. And it took me maybe a long time to kind of recognize what was really the thing that drove me in the directions that I have lived my life. But I know that I am very analytical, but I'm also incredibly creative. And I think that's one thing that sort of drew me to dance, which ultimately led me into the kitchen, which is in dance, there's this foundation of you have to be technically driven. You have to understand, at its very core, what is my body doing in order to be able to create the art. So you don't start as an artist, you start as a technician. And through the understanding of technique, you can become the artist. And then as your sense of artistry grows, your sense of technique will also develop. And then it kind of becomes this sort of spiraling situation. And when I was looking to retire from the performing world, the culinary world, pastry world especially, was equally as attractive to me because I recognized immediately to be able to thrive in this environment, you have to have a base technique first to then become the artist. And it just was like, oh, okay, this seems like a sort of very natural transition. And that's kind of how I have always been. I do like to pick things apart and find, the technique within to kind of make something amazing.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got a mix of creativity. You're a creative that's calculated, likes to question things. Is there a bit of OCD in there too that kind of drives all of that forward?
I think there's a little bit of that. Once upon a time, I think perfectionism has since been rebranded a little bit as maybe more OCD. Once upon a time would have called myself a perfectionist. I have actually since come to recognize that perfectionism really is just a defense mechanism. And essentially what you're doing is, I'm going to set the bar so high for myself that it doesn't matter what anybody else says. ultimately I will hurt myself more than anyone ever could with their critiques. And I will be my own worst enemy. That's really what perfectionism is. So once I kind of made that realization, I was like, okay, well, I have to get rid of that. That's horrible. But I am the type of person that is like searching for betterment. How can I make myself a little bit better? The OCD part of me was really sort of driven home with dance school at the very beginning. And I am very much like straight lines and things like that. If stuff's a little bit out of place, it just drives me bananas.
Yeah,
Um,
those are good personality traits to have, especially earlier on when you're developing your own ID and your own self perspective, and that does translate into everything else. But as we grow older, whether it be in the arts, in business, both in some cases, we learn to stop condemning, being critical, complaining, that sort of thing. And you don't ask, "Is this good?" or you don't ask, "Is this good enough?" You're always wondering, "Can it be better?" Yeah, I think that's definitely that comes with the maturity for most. You and I probably both wish we were, in that frame of mind in our teens or earlier 20s. But look at us now. It's a long road, but it's paved with yellow bricks at the end of the day. So we've got the classic ballet. You've wanted to sort of retire out of it. Clearly, you've had success with that transition. Now, I'm wondering, there's definitely a misconception, I think, with most people that are in a certain career field or doing something in the arts. They might be stereotyped. They might be considered to have this certain archetype, or maybe they're only good at one thing. But what helps them transition a lot of the time is their status. Sometimes it's an elite status. Sometimes they're known as being experts in their field. And no matter what they do, that sort of, that background of success follows them throughout the transition. Were you able to personally brand yourself as a ballet dancer and let it sort of have that reputation precede you as you moved into this other world that you now live in and exist in?
At first, not really. I tell this story a lot, which is on my very first day of culinary school, I was actually really kind of scared and fearful that maybe I had made the wrong decision. Because when I decided to retire from performing, I put everything on hold. I deleted social media. Like, I didn't want to know even what auditions were going on to kind of say, oh, you know what? I probably could have actually booked that. Did I make the wrong choice? And on my first day of culinary school, our chef instructor, who I actually never had again, her name was Chef Tony, and she, in her introduction, told us that she had once been a dancer with Alvin Ailey Company. And afterwards, I sort of pulled her aside and I was like, Chef Tony, I'm, a kid that came from ballet conservatory. I did Broadway for a long time, and I am retiring and making this transition. I don't really know who I am and how I fit into this new world. Can you help me share some experiences that you had that made the transition very easy? And she looked at me and she goes, you're going to do amazing in this industry, and here's why. As a dancer, you understand the importance of muscle memory. You understand the importance of spatial awareness. You understand the importance of repetition. You understand why technique is so important and is such a base foundation. You also understand how to see something and replicate it. All of those skills are the things that you need to thrive in this industry, and you already have that. She's like, you haven't changed. The kitchen is now your new studio. It's just the decor looks different. And so from that moment on, I realized I wasn't starting something new. I was bringing 20 some odd years of experience with me. And once I made that correlation, then I found that culinary school was actually relatively easy for me. The techniques were new, but I knew that it's important to understand what technique is all about. So I kind of became this total baking nerd. And my chef instructor, Chef Joe, kind of really recognized that in me. And there was another student in the class who was also the same. And so he started to create this sort of like Superman and Lex Luthor kind of relationship. Like, he would come up to me and he'd be like, you're doing really, really great, but Willa got 100 on the test and you only got 99. And then he would go up to Will and be like, you're doing really, really great, but Steve got 100 on the test and you only got 99. And so every good superhero needs a villain. Yeah. And we kind of ended up having this relationship. We pushed each other as much as we could. And it was recognized that, I was bringing something. I was bringing some experiences. I was bringing a little bit of wisdom, all that. I wasn't this 18-year-old kid that was like, well, mom and dad said I can't live in the basement anymore if I don't go to trade school.
Yeah.
Like I had made this decision. I had a career before. This is my, next chapter in my life. And so I didn't waste any time. And I think that was sort of recognized kind of right away by my chefs, and they knew how to keep pulling the goodness out.
Yeah. Extrapolate on your previous experiences. I love the confidence builder, and it's such an easy win for someone that's sort of ushering someone into a new business, whether they're an employee or a new student into a new school of some sort. You can make it so much easier on whoever it is you're working with. And I'm sure you know this now as someone that teaches, by just identifying their strengths and being able to make that correlation, or making it obvious to them that, hey, you do have the skills required to be here, or you at least have some sort of baseline or foundation that you can build on, and here's why. And it just opens this it shuts the door of being pessimistic and negative in any situation, really, where you're put in a position where you have to actually perform or work or learn, and it opens the door of opportunity and optimism. And I can tell that's kind of what happened with you, and I'm assuming that's what you sort of share with your students. I can tell through the enthusiasm in your voice that it's not something you're ever going to forget. And it's probably something that's sort of helped develop your character, not only, when you were a student, but as a professor or a teacher, or what is the correct terminology there?
Yeah, teacher. We'll go with that.
Teacher as well. I'm assuming.
Inspirer of new generations. I've been really fortunate. I have had some wonderful teacher mentors throughout my life, both as a performer and even as a chef. And so when I started teaching, that was a promise that I made to myself, is be the mentor that your students deserve. And that is probably the most exhausting job, because each one of them needs something different. So I have to try and meet them where they are. Like you said, I have to kind of recognize that moment as best that I can and try my hardest to kind of go, okay, I see this in you, and you might not see this in yourself right now, but if you just trust me a little bit, let me just kind of push a little, let me see what is there, and help you to discover what has actually always been there. But through our own lens of self-doubt and everything else, we don't necessarily see the amazing people we are and the amazing things we have to bring to the table. It's that other side, that outer person that kind of needs to either remove that veil of self-doubt from us, or grant us permission to see what we've kind of always seen, but it might seem like you're not being humble or whatever, to kind of recognize your greatness. I think we need people to kind of tell us it's okay for you to be as amazing as you actually truly are. Absolutely. And I'm curious to hear, you at some point graduated. I'm assuming that you made it out of the school alive. And top of my class, won the award for highest mark in every single assignment that had to be done. Awesome. And it's sort of, you went on your own journey afterwards. You're, like I mentioned in the intro, I know that I threw Martha Stewart's name out there. I threw Food Network out there. I hate to just mention all that in the intro and not actually dive into sort of the, Chef Steve personal branding that went on after you left school, and how you were able to capitalize on that, school success and keep the trajectory upward. Because for a lot of people, they can graduate at the top of their class in high school or college, they can get a good job, and then it just sort of levels out. But you've just continued to, I hate to use the word peak, but you've continued to sort of up the ante and continue peaking as time goes on. Can you sort of, I don't know, what's the lens through which you see the success of that? What made it happen? When I first left school, I kind of still didn't really have an idea as to what I wanted to do. No, I'm sorry, I'm lying. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was everything. Yeah. And that is a huge burden. Problem. So because I still wasn't really sure where the final moment was going to be, but I liked it all, I deliberately put myself in places where I could gain experience. So while I was actually still in culinary school, I was working for a restaurant, up in higher end casual type of situation. We were the little brother to a Michelin star restaurant. So we were the place that you went to when you couldn't get into the big daddy. You kind of went and hung out with the brother. And so I did that for a while. And as soon as I graduated school, then I went and I worked for like a large hotel because I wanted to get the experience of like big batch cooking. It's very different to bake a cake for 9 people and 9,000 people. That is a huge
I
different
could
skill
imagine.
set. So I wanted to have that experience because, again, I was like, I'm not sure where I might end up landing. And then after that, I actually was really blessed with an opportunity to assist a James Beard award-winning pastry chef. That is something that my school actually helped to kind of arrange the interview. And I traveled 2 hours one way just to go to work with Claudia Fleming, name drop, and was her assistant for an entire year. And she had a restaurant and like an inn. So I was kind of now started to get into like this bed and breakfasty kind of world. I was doing like these really nice plated desserts and really kind of being able to sort of hone my respect for the ingredient. That's really the way Claudia approached things, is we don't need to sort of, change it up. What we need to do is showcase what is there in its natural state and just kind of elevate that. So that became sort of my point of view for food. And then my husband and I decided that we wanted to be a little bit closer to family. And that took us out of New York down to Maryland. And we had joked about doing a B&B when we retired, as all old gay couples do. And we just sort of said, maybe we should actually do this while we're still young and actually have the energy instead of, making this a professional hobby. We could probably actually, sort of have a go of this. So we found a gorgeous Victorian house that was, relatively inexpensive, needed a facelift, all of the things, and just kind of started to go. We were also very fortunate to be in a very small community that didn't have anything else like us. So anybody that's out there that's kind of thinking from like an entrepreneur standpoint, you don't go open a coffee shop in the middle of
Next
town
door,
that
yeah.
has 95 coffee shops and go, mine's going to be the best. Everyone's going to come to me. No, you go to where there is none coffee shop, but make sure you do a little research, because if there's no Starbucks there, there's no Starbucks for a reason. Let's be real. But that is kind of where we were. We were in a small little community that sort of opened their arms to us, because they're like, hey, we're lacking in this type. We need a B&B here. We want to be a little bit more touristy. We wanted to be a little bit more, kind of unique. Our approach to B&B was more boutique hotel than, staying at a lot of places where you walk in, it's like you can only go to the right because the left is where we live. Our place wasn't like that. We actually had a very large house, and then we had a little house, and so we lived in the little house, and the whole big thing was the B&B. And then we just kind of started to evolve. And I think that is the big key for anyone that's kind of trying to start a business, is you have to start small. You can't do everything because you'll just implode. You have your one thing that you kind of can exceed at, but you have to have this frame of mind that eventually our business is going to evolve, whether it's going to grow or it might change completely. And that is what we promised ourselves from day one. If something's working, let's keep that energy there. But if something's not working, let's stop. And so the natural evolution of the B&B became the local people wanted to come and partake of the food, but they didn't want to pay to stay the night, rightfully so. So we started doing local farmers markets. Then we would sell it at the farmers market so quickly that we said, well, let's not go to the farmers market. Let's just put like 2 tables on our front porch, this big old Victorian house, and have the people come to us. Then we eventually started doing like a Sunday brunch, which became very, very popular, to the point where we were sometimes sold out 6 months in advance. Then we started offering high tea, and it just kind of grew to then where we opened a little bake shop on premises at the B&B, and then eventually we're able to open our own standalone bakery in a neighboring town because of that sort of natural evolution.
That is amazing that you guys were in the B&B earlier on. You were able to identify with what was working and what isn't. And you guys were quick on your feet and were able to maneuver in a way that enabled you guys to allow more success to occur in and out of the business, in and outside of the business. And you guys have really, you have a lot of energy for anyone to sort of, realize, hey, this B&B is going great. People people are loving the food. People in the town, they love the food. They want to come. They want to eat the food. They don't want to stay the night. Why don't we just sell the food outside? Farmers markets, and it evolves into something that's sold out 6 months in advance. I mean, this is episode 225, 230. We're in there. And I can honestly say I haven't heard anyone with quite the evolution in terms of the dynamics involved, especially someone who's, came from a completely different background to get into entrepreneurship like that after you went through cooking school and you guys moved back home to be closer to family. A lot of people think that's kind of when you start to hang it up. You settle down, things move a little slower. You spend a little more time with your nieces and nephews or your mom and dad. But no, you guys are, embarking on a new journey and a new business venture on top of another business venture on top of another business venture. Are you guys still running the bakeries now? Is the B&B still in your name? What happened to everything?
Sadly, like so many, we were a casualty of the COVID.
Yeah.
In 2019 is when our standalone bakery opened. And the idea was to try to keep everything going. But what ended up happening is the bakery was so incredibly successful that we actually closed the B&B. And our intent was to kind of more go into like an Airbnb type of situation where people just could kind of just rent and
with your know-how.
But the thing that made our B&B so attractive was you were also getting this great food experience. You were kind of getting this great, like I said, we tried to run it like a little boutique hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, we gave tours all the time. People came in, we had bottles of wine, we had snacks, we had this, we had that, you could get breakfast in bed as an upcharge. You could get, these other things, all this sort of stuff. We had bicycles that you could rent. It was so Hollywood.
Yeah.
But it was so much work. And we tried as much as we could to kind of run both things. And we sat down one day and did a little bit of number crunching. And we were sort of like, if we take on 1 or 2 extra wedding cakes a month, we're making the same amount of money that we would be with the B&B, with all of the staffing and everything else. So we just sort of said, you know what, for energy's sake, let's just kind of cut that down. We're also in sort of 2 different counties. So then you're paying like, business insurance on 2 different buildings. You're paying for like licensing in 2 different places and all of that. And that just was sort of like, felt like we're kind of throwing some money away. So all of the energy went right into the bakery. And we tried to stick through COVID as best as we could. So of course, 2020, we still didn't really know what it was. There was definitely no vaccine in sight. And we were doing very well business-wise, even though, of course, we lost every single wedding that we had booked for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we sometimes booked our wedding cakes 2-3 years out. So that was a hard day to sit down and write all those refund checks. But the biggest problem was that we started losing staff. And we could not recoup the staff. And we just knew. I could kind of see the writing on the wall. And because we had like 12 employees at this point, and I was like, we're now going to be in those days where it was just me and my husband like doing all of this stuff, 20-hour days. And I kind of knew that my sanity couldn't take that anymore. And so on a whim, I saw an ad posting for a chef instructor position at Escoffier. And I just was sort of like, hey, I'll take a stab at it, whatever. And then I was offered the job like very, very quickly. And then it just became this sort of like, we had always promised ourselves if it wasn't working, we needed to kind of switch and do something else.
Yeah. And
it was just getting too questionable and too much of a gray area. So we broke our lease, we liquidated everything, sold all the equipment, and said, okay. And it was that turning the key that day on that last day, that was so hard because this was something that we started from nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. And it was kind of a little bit like that first day in culinary school,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Chef Steve, the guy with the bakery that like this, the Food Network star, like this was my new identity. And now I was going to become Chef Steve, the instructor. And I wasn't sure, like that transition felt scary for me.
Yeah.
But what I knew is because of all my experience, I knew that if I put my mind to something, that I would be good at it. I didn't have that veil of self-doubt anymore. I had long since kind of cast that off. And so I was just like, you know what? We're going to jump in here kind of both feet. I think for anyone who has any dance experience, hopefully you're seeing the correlation here, but I think that's one of the things that has made my life rather easy. As a dancer, I was always, you have to be thinking on your feet at all times, even though you know the choreography. If something goes wrong, you have to quickly like change your body in order to sort of make it happen. You have to literally be able to sort of pivot and turn on a dime and do something else. So I think that has always helped me. Is I was trained and raised in this whole quick, change positions really quickly. We're doing something else now. It's just total instinct for me.
Yeah.
And that might be very challenging for someone else. But that's a skill that I know that I have, is that kind of pivot on a dime thing.
So a lot of questions. I'll try to boil it down to about 3, but we do have that instinctiveness that's embedded earlier on in your dancing career, and it literally has programmed you to just deal with the elements. Whatever's thrown at you, you either can go right through it or you know to get out of the way. But either way, you've had this trend that's allowed you to become mega successful and elaborate on whatever it is that you do and make these seamless transitions into the next path or career field, job opportunity, what have you. Now, how important do you think it is to sort of put those seeds out there like you did with your current position, or, you went into this entrepreneurial life, or you've planted so many seeds? Is this something that you would suggest people do more often, maybe to those that are more closed-minded and want to sort of stay in that safe and secure, whatever situation they have going on?
I think there's nothing. Hey, here's the other thing. I grew up on a farm, so I know about planting seeds. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. We talk about like keeping your options open and and all these sorts of things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all, especially when you're trying to start out something, because you have an idea and you want to sort of grow that idea. But you have to be open to the fact that that idea might change. It might change just out of necessity. The building you want is no longer available. You didn't get the loan. You've got to go somewhere else now. It's sometimes just as simple as that. That might mean, okay, we were looking at 300 square feet, but all we can afford now is 210. How do we make it work in this space now? So you have to be totally open and flexible. And I think maybe COVID taught a lot of people that if you didn't have some flexibility and you couldn't quickly change, then you were done. Yeah. So I think that is totally very crucial. I think you also have to recognize that as you're going through the path that you're on, another path might present itself, and it's okay to take you can grant yourself permission to try another little thing and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you can kind of backtrack and keep going. But if it is working, then keep going, like keep running with that. Don't pigeonhole yourself to, I want a cupcake shop and that's it, nothing else. I will never be open to anything else, period, end of story. So you're kind of already setting yourself up for failure before you even get started.
And are you a firm believer in the preparation meets luck as sort of, the interstitial or the intersection of success? Because it seems like you've had a lot of things that sort of pop into your life, like an ad for the professor role, and you kind of just were like, hey, this is one of those things that you can identify it now a lot easier.
Well, there's no such thing as coincidence. Coincidence is simply when preparation meets opportunity. Mm-hmm. That's all coincidence really is. And so if you operate in a, kind of be prepared type of situation and preparing yourself at all times for things, then, when stuff arises, you go, yeah, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. Let's go for it. Let's just kind of see what happens. And then you also want to sort of trust, I think, a little bit that process of, into the unknown, you want to kind of just go, okay, I have confidence in what I can bring to the table, and I have confidence in my skills and my abilities and my talent. And so I have to run through a bit of a dark period here until the ball starts rolling. But have confidence in yourself, know who you are, because then everything you're going to do is be genuine. So that's my other piece of advice, is you have to know who you are.
Absolutely. And now that you know who you are, the students know who you are, What's sort of your role at the school? I know that you said it was more of the back end stuff before we started the podcast. Could you give us a breakdown?
Yeah, certainly. So I am a chef instructor for the pastry department, and more often than not, I will be teaching my students kind of what we can call the equivalent to baking 101, right? So here's sort of our very sort of base technique, which I love because obviously that's kind of my jam. I also teach quite often our cake decorating class, which is sort of the last class that the pastry students have before they go out to an externship. Again, because I've been very fortunate to, have had some very successful cake moments, like you mentioned. I was featured in Martha Stewart wedding, in the Knot, in Brides magazine. And won some kind of more local awards around the Maryland area for a lot of the cakes that I've done, plus being a Food Network champion. So I love to kind of teach that class as well. I currently teach, actually we just started a new term today, and so I teach leadership and development for our hotel restaurant management program. And then I teach menu design for our associates and a diploma program. So basically kind of helping students to know when you're getting ready to sort of start something. We start with a concept. The concept is what kind of drives and dictates things like even like your decor, the type of menu that you're going to have, your hours of operation, all this type of stuff. It has to start with that kind of, idea. And then we have to let the idea grow, and we have to nourish the idea. And then we have to recognize that at some point, maybe we go, okay, this part is probably not practical. So we can let that go. It's okay, And then here's this other thing that we can maybe sort of grow, and we can sort of make a little bit of a shift, a little pivot, as it were, and start to focus our energy in this direction.
I like how that is brought in as general as it is. It's really based on your personal experience. And I'm curious if they let you write some of the syllabus, or if that's something that you adopted and, revised.
I think I've put my personal stamp on it. Let's kind of sort of, kind of go with that route. The syllabus has, kind of existed for a while. I do have opportunity to, sort of add my 2 cents, as it were, from time to time. But what I really kind of do is bring my personal perspective based on experience to the students. A majority of our online students are not only career changers, but looking to kind of maybe do their own gig. So I've walked both of those paths. And I think that it maybe helps me to be in their shoes a little bit more, because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to kind of be like, I think I want to try something different. I have this other skill. I want to nurture it a little bit more, and I want to see where it goes. I have been there. And I think that when I have opportunity to sort of speak with my students one-on-one and get to recognize that moment with them, it's like, hey, you're not doing something new now, right? You've been, you were in the military for 20 plus years. Like, do you know how much of that we need in this environment? All of that, like, dedication, determination, the understanding of, like leadership roles and working as a team, the physicality itself, all of this is so important towards being a successful, entrepreneur in this new area that you're trying to develop.
Could you imagine being like a junior cook in a kitchen with a drill sergeant for your boss?
Well, kitchens kind of are a little bit that way. The restaurant that I was working at while I was in culinary school, the chef was very much that, and he was Australian. So, we were dropping some F and C bombs all the time. But he was very much that, he wasn't like a drill sergeant per se, but he knew what he wanted. And if you paid attention and were in line, everything was cool. But as soon as your brain went to sleep for a second, you were getting stuff thrown at you from across the kitchen.
Yeah, and it helps, right?
When you've been hit in the head by a couple hamburger rolls, you're kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I need to.
Negative stimuli.
That was actually it was the first place that I sort of really recognized this whole don't mess around kind of thing. I remember seeing on more than one occasion people coming in for their stage. And I remember them walking in at 5 o'clock and being asked to leave at 5:10.
Oh, wow.
Like within 10 minutes, he was like, nope, this is not going to work. Thanks. Pack up your knives. Goodbye. And at first I was like, damn, that's harsh. But I really recognized quickly, like, especially when I started to run my own kitchen, you can read people, fairly quickly, and you can kind of see, are they willing to make adjustments? And that was kind of his jam. Like he would say, no, you got to do it like this. And if they didn't start to adopt his method, it was like, get out, because I don't have time for you. But if they're like, oh, okay, and I'll do it like this now and whatever, then he was like, okay, there's something here. Let's kind of keep going.
So I know that this is something that you're only schooling online right now. Is it strictly online, or do you do campus classes as well? How does that?
I strictly do the online situation, mostly because, I am nowhere close to to Boulder or Austin.
Oh, it's in Colorado.
Yeah,
and
so
Texas.
our grand campuses are in Colorado and in Texas, but a lot of online faculty, we are also responsible for kind of creating some of our own content. So I've shot a lot of stuff in my kitchen. I've shot some things that are very, very quick. I've shot some stuff for my students in real time so that they can understand that, it might actually take 20 minutes to make a good meringue.
Yeah.
So if they can see that process in real time, it becomes very, very helpful for them. So I kind of get to work in my kitchen, but, we still have this interweb situation, between us.
And you have somewhat of a content background too. So I'm assuming that helps quite a bit.
It does. Yes, it helps a lot. Also, my acting background sort of helps me to understand how to, address camera, speak in a clear tone. I do my best to try to alleviate some of those ums and likes and this, that's, and whatevers. I know how to behave on camera. I also sort of understand what the student needs to be seeing. So when I'm shooting my stuff, to make sure that everything is very clear in frame, bring, stuff up a little bit so they can see even like a close-up view. And then also we have to make it ever so slightly entertaining as well. Yeah. Otherwise they're not going to listen. So I've been able to kind of bring some of that as my personal stamp as well. I've got dad jokes. I've got, isms and
military
things.
Jokes.
No military jokes.
No, maybe some Australian stuff.
I do share things with them all the time, which I don't think ever gets old, at least not for me.
That's great. I mean, you've got for those who don't know, you had a YouTube channel. I know it's been a while since, maybe there's multiple channels. I found one with some older content, but I know that you've got the content background, you've got the skill and the expertise, you've got the credibility and the knowledge that definitely validates you as someone qualified to teach anyone to do anything cake or fundamental core concept related in your field. You've really, you've kind of, you're someone that strikes me as the person with the ability that could open their own school, and it seems like you're kind of on the ladder. You're always on a ladder. And I'm wondering what's next for Steve. He's in this teaching position now. Does Steve open his own school? Does he start his own program? What are you thinking? What's the next step?
God, the number of ideas that currently run through this head,
I'm so
sometimes
sorry.
it's just is exhausting.
Yeah.
I have a few ideas of a new way of kind of doing content. The YouTube channel was sort of born out of the Food Network success and wanting to have the control to tell my own story the way I wanted it, and we had some friends that have a production company. So it became this wonderful sort of little experiment for both of us. They normally shot documentary films. So to try something different for them was a great sort of way to, develop their skills. And then the same thing for us. Season 2, unfortunately, is just really expensive.
It's in the works. Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay. So I have a few ideas as far as various avenues I can use for creating content. I actually am going to school. I don't have any college education. So in the afternoon of my life, I'm also a student going to college, which is a very, very interesting experience. And I think had I done it when I was 18 or 19, I would have bombed. But because I have this lens of experience and just like, I know how to budget my time now. I know how to, save energy
Fewer
and expend
distractions.
energy and things and all this type of stuff. So I'm really enjoying going to school and kind of, learning things. Of course, my OCD is kicking in. So if I do not have a 4.0, I am just
You're failing.
livid.
Yeah.
I got a 105.9 on my last English class. Like, that's how
4.2 GPA. So
yeah, that's, I'm like, but I need more than a 4.0.
yeah.
And the reason I'm doing that is just because I don't know for sure what might be next, but I am preparing myself. So no matter what comes, I can succeed at it. I'm not scared.
Yeah. Adjust accordingly.
Exactly. I love the job that I have, and I look forward. Our school is growing, and we didn't have like a plant-based program a year ago, and we do now. We have a holistic program. What's coming on down the pipes? We don't know. That's kind of, some top secret stuff.
Yeah.
So who knows what the life of Escoffier is going to have? Who knows what the life of Steve is going to have? But I just know that I need to be open to whatever the multiverse throws at me and prepare myself as best as I can, so that when another opportunity comes, I am fully prepared for it.
Awesome. For those that are fully prepared to maybe look a bit more into Escoffier, maybe you could give us, perfect introductory to who it's best suited for. Maybe people that are trying to get into new career field, maybe people who just want to learn something new. I don't know if you guys have smaller courses, classes, certifications, or if it's just more broad, bigger terms. You guys do like a normal college, but let's, I don't know, educate the listeners that are interested.
Well, we definitely have a diploma program. That's kind of, I guess, what we would call a little bit, perhaps, for some of the casual learners. We have a variety of student body, and it's fascinating. That's what I do at the beginning of every term is I ask my students, why are you here? Tell me why you're here so that I can help you achieve that goal. And we do have some people that are retired and they have been cooking their entire life and they just want to make their cooking better. Great. We love you. Come on down. We have some students fresh out of high school that are looking for, a new opportunity. We love you. Come on down. We have a lot of students that are ex-military or current military. They're using like their GI Bill. That's what it's called.
Yep, that's it.
We have so many career changers. We have people that are they've been in the industry for a while and they're just looking to take that next big step. And then we, of course, with our associates program, we have students kind of like me, right? They're like, I don't have a piece of paper that says all of these things. I mean, I do have a piece of paper, but my school actually closed. So I feel like this homeless kid, right?
Yeah.
Like my parents, my alma mater doesn't exist anymore. Who am I anyway?
Yeah.
So we have literally pretty much everybody. And that's the wonderful thing about the online program that we have is you are not maybe separated because of geography. That opportunity can still be there for you to better yourself in whichever way that you're looking. And what is exciting is we do have some students that come with a very specific goal in mind, but while they're with us, they evolve and grant themselves permission to maybe try something new. And that is even exciting as well.
I'm going to clip that and I'm going to upload it to YouTube and I'm going to call it the Escoffier. I'm going to make it an Escoffier commercial with spokesperson Chef Steve. That was wonderful. Well, Steve, we've covered just about everything up to this point. I think that we can squeeze in without sort of, packing too much in and just overwhelming everyone. Is there anything that I didn't mention or bring up that you wanted to talk about or address before I move us into some more rapid fire type questions and I get us both out of here?
I don't think so. If you're looking for my Food Network stuff, just, a sensible Google search will do there. That in and of itself is kind of like a whole nother your podcast, getting that experience and the way that sort of helped. I will say the Food Network experience definitely did help. It was a huge catalyst for the success of our business. And we really tried to cash in on that as much as possible. We actually ended up hiring, like a marketing team, PR people to sort of assist with us. There's, I think, in the entrepreneur world, because you're starting your own business, you also feel like you have to do all of that yourself. And that's not necessarily true. There are people out there, that's their gig, right? Mm-hmm. They know how to make that work. So enlist the help of those professionals so that you can focus on building the business that you are trying to build. Because when you are chief cook and bottle washer, it's exhausting. So even if it's get yourself an accountant, take some things off of your plate so you can be the creator that you need to be so this thing can grow. So enlist the help of the other professionals. It is so worth the investment.
Yeah, it takes an army. I regret not having you on even longer. We might have to bring you back. You've got so much insight into, you pretty much described what is Shark Tank for most people in their businesses, and how you can leverage the PR to sort of, you can stretch that out 10 years. There's no end to these sort of credibility and the content that you've made around all of that, and the business that you built on top of it. It's kind of just, it's a machine, and you're one of the few people that really truly understand how to build it and keep it well oiled. And we might have to bring you back, but I'll move us into some rapid fires right now. Don't try to niche this down to any specific time of your life, but I'm sure there's some in each respective category. What are the main influences? People like leaders in the spaces that you've sort of looked up to?
Claudia Fleming, for sure. She, was a huge mentor to me. The very first teacher that I had in ballet school, his name was David Maroney, was just, a drill sergeant type of person, but very, very caring at the same time, and was kind of able to really sort of pull that out. I'm going to say my mother, because I usually talk about my dad on these things, but my mom lately has been like, how come you never mention me? And I'm like, well, that's because you're still alive. Dad is dead. So I kind of sometimes feel I have to talk about my dad a lot just to kind of keep him alive. But definitely my mother. We'll start there.
Great. And where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Where do I see myself in 10 years? I would love to be on the cusp of retirement, whatever that means.
Another
no B&B. Yes, I would like to be on the cusp of retirement so that I can still enjoy a lot of things before I get, like too old and decrepit and slip and break a hip.
Yeah, that'll never happen. But
this old dancer body, I'm sure I've got like pick a joint. There's arthritis there.
Besides finding out which joints have arthritis, where can people go to find out more about you, Escoffier, any sort of content, or anywhere you're online where they can engage in dialogue?
Well, first and foremost, you can go to escoffier.edu. That is the school's website. What's really fun is at the bottom right-hand corner, if you're there for more than 30 seconds, a little AI person will sort of pop up, and you can start asking it a bunch of questions, and it will drive you where you need to go. We actually have a wonderful podcast on our website, which is called The Ultimate Dish. It's really kind of focused a little bit, not necessarily towards students, but there's stuff there that's very, very helpful. That's a wonderful thing. I actually did an episode of that. And of course, you can follow Escoffier on all of the platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. If you want to find me, go to my YouTube channel, The Sweet Life of Steve, hit like and subscribe. There will be some new content, I promise, but the stuff that's there is fun and entertaining for sure, and some really, really great recipes for both savory stuff, sweet stuff, and we do a beverage every episode, which was kind of fun. I wanted to, got to get your drink on. You can also follow me on TikTok, Chef Steve Konopelski, Konopelski. TikTok is kind of what I do the most. And then Instagram, I finally got rid of the Book of Faces.
Very nice.
Or as my mother calls it, the news.
Yeah. And Chef Steve, everyone, instructor for baking and pastry arts at Escoffier School of Culinary Arts, entrepreneur, personality, and entertainer. Thanks for coming on, showing how to really maximize the power of you with everyone listening today. It was a pleasure.